Back when I was a beginning teacher, I assigned a project that was supposed to have impact. It wasn't symbolic, it wasn't small, it was super meaningful. But the problem was I had no frameworks and I had no project-based learning, I had no design thinking scaffolds. I just knew that signing a petition somehow would not be enough. And what I did not know was what would be enough for my students. So I left these teenagers standing in front of enormous systemic problems with no tools, no proportional pathway from care to action, and a message that if there was response wasn't somehow transformative, it was inadequate. It was around global warming, AIDS in Africa, things like that. It can't be just a petition, I said. So I thought I was cultivating agency in them, but I actually realized now, and it makes me cringe, is I was cultivating fear. So as I understand it now, there's a couple of things, like adults need to understand their own anxiety transference. Like I was anxious about those things. So in my mind, subconsciously, motivating kids to do something about it would transfer that anxiety. That's an insight that should be examined for many teachers. The second thing was, and probably more importantly than that, is students can't carry adult scale anxiety. They're students. They can't turn it into effective action without structure. So in corporate settings, when we tackle complex problems, we use iteration. We break those challenges down, we define scope, we get into our iterative feedback loops, and it works in corporations, and we divide and conquer. But in classrooms, a lot of times we surface the largest possible problems, and we expect teenagers to generate impact on demand. And when they freeze or disengage or get anxious, we interpret it as apathy, but it could be overload. You know, we call it rigor, we call it relevance, we call it that we're preparing them for the real world, but sometimes it's just a curriculum of fear. And the most troubling part is that many teachers don't realize that they are afraid. And so this urgency feels like it's a responsible thing to do. But urgency without scaffolding students is just adding adult anxiety onto their shoulders. In this new system we're in, if information is not scarce, and it isn't anymore, then our job is to not flood students with crisis narratives. They get that all the time. Our job needs to be to build judgment, proportion, and the capacity to act at the right scale. So we can't keep leaving kids holding the emotional weight of problems that they didn't create. Our work needs to be not to shield them from reality, but our work should be to sequence reality in a way that builds on their strengths instead of creating paralysis in them. So that requires design, it requires creativity, it requires time to help them learn their process. It requires teacher humility, seeing themselves not as the content expert so much as the bridge or facilitator to help them integrate very difficult real-world problems in a way that does create agency for them and makes them feel positive. And it absolutely requires us to examine our own fear before we hand it over to them.